Hello. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Together, we explore topics of interest to in-house lawyers. We cover career, practice tips, leadership, the future of law, mental health, legal tech, and much, much more. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. Finally, have fun. In-house legal practice is a serious business, but you don't have to take yourself seriously. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. I am really excited to have this conversation. She is a friend. We serve on Clock Education Board together, and she is an in-house leader that I've been admiring for a very, very long time. So without further ado, Marla, welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. I'm so excited to have this conversation. For folks who have not met you, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Olga. I'm so happy to be here with you, and I'm honored to have been chosen to be on your podcast. I'm Marla Crawford. I'm the General Counsel of Simplify. We are a legal technology services provider, and in my role, I am the only working lawyer at Simplify, but also because I am an e-discovery lawyer by trade, I get involved in a lot of our client workflows. I engage with our clients and also on our contract analytics lifecycle management division. So it's a busy day for me at Simplify every day.
Oh my God. The one and only loved lawyer that also helps with product. I just love it. That is so great. So tell us, I do want to dive into all of that. I want to understand how did you get to be where you are? How did this destination happen?
I think it was Oliver Twist that said you never wind up where you started out going. And I would guess that would apply to me. I started in big law in 1988 and showed an aptitude for working on large discovery cases before we had computers. So my first big case was the Drexel Burnham Lambert bankruptcy case. Think Lehman earlier without computers. And my job that I was assigned was to review boxes of documents that were delivered 48 hours before every deposition, to go through them and choose the documents that would be used in the deposition. And I was good at that. And I started to put together a little library. They gave me a room in the basement of the building. And that was really the beginning of me concentrating on the discovery phase of large litigations. And I worked in products liability, I worked in commercial, and then the Enron case happened. And I was just very lucky to be at the right place at the right time. Our client, the Jones Day client, was Lehman Brothers, and I was tasked to lead discovery for Lehman in the Enron case. So I was literally one of the first e-discovery lawyers and was sitting in the room when we were building the first technology systems to review email.
I love it. They gave me a room in the basement. That sounds exciting. That's a straight out of Harry Potter type of experience. What was that like?
It was a room in the basement with shelves. And to be honest, I was so excited about it. I recognized that nobody wanted to do what I was doing and that it was something I was good at and that they were relying on me. And they would call me up in the middle of a deposition and say, can you find a document that does this? And when I say call me up, I mean call the phone in the room in the basement.
I love this. This is great. It's interesting. I love how lawyers who are part of the Enron case and you as well talk about it as actually sort of historic experience that maybe have been hard, but also a lucky event through which you learn. That's a very interesting framing of that. Tell me why you view it this way.
It was really the pivotal moment in my entire career. A lot of lawyers are litigators, and if it hadn't been for that opportunity to do something new, to do something for the first time, I don't think the path of my career would have been as successful. So it was really a chance for me to do something that was first, and to separate myself from the pack of all the other litigators in the world.
I love it. And so you discussed that no one wanted to do this before. I'm curious, sort of, why do you think, you clearly saw an opportunity of being the first and kind of building the world that you want to inhabit. But other people didn't see this. I'm curious, why did you think it was an opportunity for you? What helped you to identify it as something that you jump on? Question one. And question two, why do you think others didn't do the same?
Well, for me, I was a young lawyer, and I also was a young mother. So I was really trying hard to balance my life. And one of the things that I recognized was that when you did discovery, you didn't have to travel for trials. So I early on identified that as something that I could do as a balancing measure. And so that was one thing. And the other thing was, it didn't bother me. I didn't mind being the person in the basement with the boxes. I kind of liked it. I liked knowing something really well, and it didn't matter to me that it was something that maybe other people thought was less important or sexy. Not being in the room with the depositions, not going to argue the motions, not being the trial lawyer, not being on the trial team. For me, I saw this as something not only as a balancing act, but a way to highlight myself and do something that nobody else really was interested in. Why were they not interested in it? Because I think they saw it as grunt work, less important, more boring,
Not sexy.
not sexy.
Not sexy. Okay. And so that not sexy work ended up actually being a big technology story that I've seen throughout my career. You probably started seeing it much sooner than I have, because I entered a little bit later. I think I entered when the rules of e-discovery started to proliferate. I had an opportunity to manage a lot of paralegals, an army of them, and lots of boxes as well. I've been on massive cases, so I have a little bit of an idea of what that like, and the opportunity that presents, the not sexy opportunity it presents. But then technology came along, and you're talking about being in the room, and how was that, and why was that meaningful to you?
So, can you imagine? There were 600,000 emails in the Enron case. We found that to be an overwhelming amount of data. Today, it's not even a big matter. We had to build the technology provider that was helping us had to build 6 systems. So the 600,000 were broken down into 100,000 in 6 systems. Each review tool could only host 100,000. So we needed 6 of them. So you had to do every search 6 times. We found that to be revolutionary. It was like space, like being on the moon, because here we were lawyers who had post-its and coding sheets and pieces of paper and paper clips, and that was like the stuff of our trade. And we were going to be replacing that with a computer and a system to do automatic searches. So the fact that you had to do it 6 times, for us, it was revolutionary.
And tell me, what was your role? You are a subject matter expert that lives in the basement, that has to be called, that is witnessing this really sort of historic event and a historic case. that really actually changed quite a lot in the way we practice law as well. What was your role, and how did you see it as a continued opportunity that you should continue pursue?
So, you don't really know when you're doing something how it's going to turn out. You don't realize, I think, the consequences. And we were so busy. I mean, it was the hardest I've ever worked in my life. So, it was hard to appreciate in the moment what was going on. It's like watching your children grow. You don't really see it every single day, but then when you look back on the pictures from 3 years ago, you can't believe how big they've gotten. And that was the feeling. We were just trying to keep up. We were just trying to manage. So my role was I led a team of lawyers in the discovery in the Enron case for Lehman Brothers. We had teams of lawyers reviewing information, providing the information for depositions and all the discovery points, and making sure the partners knew what was going on so that they could start to strategize what they were going to do in the larger case with the merits. And then when Enron was over, it became apparent that this email stuff was here to stay, and these review matters were going to continue using electronic review tools. And so it was almost unspoken that I would just continue to do that work because it was what I had learned. And there were very few of us that were, really knowledgeable about how to use the tools at that time.
Indeed, the email stuff is here to stay. It is still with us very much now in much higher magnitude. Reflecting back on what 30 years or 35 years of this technology adventure, I know you've done other things. I guess I'll ask you kind of a question of how did it change legal practice? Let's just start optimistically for the better.
I mean, it it changed it in a really monumental way. So before, when we were practicing discovery with boxes and documents, we had time. It was a different pace. It was a different expectation of accuracy. Reasonableness, the standard of reasonableness is what we always talked about. Somebody would come crying that a paper clip fell off, a post-it fell off in a box, and they can't figure out where it came from. And you would say, it's okay. We have like thousands of other post-its. It's not a matter of perfection. We're doing the best we can. The use of technology changed all that. So it changed it all to be the expectation of speed. It changed it in terms of the expectation of increased accuracy, moving toward perfection and away from reasonableness, although those are still the standards. And technology also changed what I call the professionalism of the law. So, invading into the legal space are all other kinds of people to help the lawyers do the work: technologists, business people, service providers. This was something new.
So let's talk about it. That is a subject that is very interesting to me because, especially when you run a legal department, but actually at a law firm as well, it is at least 50-50 folks who've gone to law school, members of the bars in their respective or multiple states, and folks who haven't. They may be professionals in their own rights. They could be CFOs. They could be marketing, sales professionals. They could be technologists, data science. I mean, you name it. Those are recognized professional disciplines. And I ran departments where lawyers are outnumbered by a massive factor, and they are a minority. I'm curious, how did that sort of change the culture and team dynamics and in interactions and the future of law?
Yeah, I mean, this is really an interesting topic, right? I think you have come out recently with a movement to stop calling people who work in law non-lawyers, right? Because we don't say non-doctors, we don't use that in other places in our professional society. So I think it's an interesting question, and I think e-discovery was one of the places where this change happened. And sometimes lawyers are slow, often most of the time lawyers are slow to
Very deliberate. Let's call it deliberate. Let's put a positive spin on our slowness and call it deliberate and intentional. How about this? That's less
deliberate. We are
judgy.
deliberate. I love that. I'm going to adopt that and use that going forward. We are deliberate. So I think it has been a difficult evolution for lawyers to be welcoming to these other kinds of professionals to work really in the cases. So we're not talking just about finance, we're not just talking about tech. We're talking about people like you suggested, data scientists, linguists, technologists who are working side by side with the lawyers in the matters, in the merits of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. My experience in big law was an army of various professionals, technologists, paralegals, data scientists, who frankly had decades on me in terms of experience, both in law firms and outside, and where I achieved an educated experience in their own rights. There's one category of people like that. There's also a category of folks who would have gone to law school, but for various socioeconomic pressures had not had an opportunity. Going to law school is a privilege. It's an expensive privilege, both in terms of actually out of pocket costs and opportunity cost. If you're taking a clerkship, you're prolonging your childhood. You must be able to afford to do that. So it's a profession full of highly privileged people. Many times, especially if you approach big law and Fortune 500 departments, which is a self-selected group of people that hires from, let's just say, top 10, 20 law schools historically, which is, another self-selected group of people. There's a really high correlation with socioeconomic status, race, gender, and all kinds of other things. And so you realize when you manage that folks who are not lawyers but either professionals in their own rights or could have been in your position had they been in different circumstances, and they're as equally dedicated and excited to serve and actually sometimes exceed your capabilities because they've done it longer and wanted it actually more. That humbles you. That's my first experience in big law. My second experience was actually in the Fortune 500, Fortune 100 department, and I manage a massive army of contract administrators throughout the world. And that was an interesting experience because I had half of the team was folks who could have gone to law school but didn't, and the other half was actually lawyers who hadn't had a privilege of going to top 10, 20 law schools and therefore did not have an opportunity to be in the law firm, and then basically had to take jobs that do not call them lawyers but call them as contract administrators. And I think those two experiences for me very much were around sort of power dynamics. And I found them really interesting. And so that's the point of view. And so as we talked a little bit about sort of the positive of technology, and then you have this influx of other professionals coming, what was the negative?
The negative was again on this topic of like the professionalism of the law. So I work now for legal service provider, Simplify. We are, dealing with our clients, law firms and corporate clients every day. So I say this, with the love in my heart for the company I work at and all of the providers who helped me when I was both in the law firm and in-house. Service providers are a cog in the wheel now of practicing law. But the service provider in coming into the law in such an integral part of discovery, I think changed a lot of things. It changed a lot of the old school professionalism and expectations of the bar. We've added a different salesperson type role into the practice of law. And it really was something new because there wasn't that piece before technology, before the invasion of e-discovery and technology into the legal world. It was a real lawyer driven business. And e-discovery added a whole other type of professional.
So, staying in technology by choice and still practicing law in the in house role gives you an opportunity to give legal advice and moonlight or have a second job, depending how much you like it and willing to do as essentially a product leader. I don't know if that's how you think about yourself, but a lot of folks who do similar jobs like you kind of describe themselves as product leader. How do you view it and how do you prioritize that?
So it's not something that, I plan every day, but so I am the working lawyer in the company, and that involves what it involves in terms of the day-to-day law stuff, contracts and conflicts and issues involving HR, that sort of thing. But then I do follow certain of our clients' matters. I'm on certain distribution lists. I get myself involved with our executive team in terms of delivery, running the day to day. I'm on the executive team. So I work with Mark, our CEO, and Ari, our CTO, every day on just running the business of the company, which has been really, really fun. The delivery team just loves it when I have a thought on workflows or communication style or have something to say about what's going on in the business, but they're very kind to me when I do choose to insert myself. So I'm trying just to, watch the workings of the business every day, all day long, to the extent I can. Sometimes things are pointed out to me and I'm asked to get involved in them, and sometimes I just notice them and involve myself.
And so I'm curious, how does it make you feel as a lawyer who's not only valued for her legal advice, but also in product and business conversations?
I have to say that's been the most fun part of working at Simplify, is working with our development team on our innovations. So it's been fun because I can look at it almost from the consumer point of view and say, "Oh, I wish I had that. I wish I had that when I was in house. That would have changed my life." So working with our development team on, we call it CI Innovations, CI Simplify Innovations. And that's been like a sort of extra bonus to my time here at Simplify. And I have to say also, I love working with our team. I love our people. I like people. I like to hear what they're doing, what they have to say, what their conflicts are, what they're proud of. We have a Slack channel called Virtual Chat where I just like to follow along and see what's going on all day long.
Conflicts never happen at work. Totally unheard of. But coming to the end, I have a few more questions. I
Okay.
specifically want to focus um, on what do you do when technology changes? I think we're in the midst of one of many technological transformations in our lifetime that will affect our career, our personal life, our lives in general. What, I guess I'll start with this. What motivates you to still be part of all of this digital transformation adventures that you've started having now for a long time and continue having? What is it about those changes that make you excited?
I mean, how fun is this, right? How fun is it to see how things change and imagine the future? You know, if you look on Facebook, you probably have friends who are still posting about how great the 80s were. I'm like the opposite. I'm always looking to see what's coming, what's the future, what's going to be next. What are our children and our grandchildren, what are their lives going to look like? So having seen the digital age emerge in our society and the law, now that we're at this pivot point with artificial intelligence, I always choose, I think like you do, to look at the positive, to imagine how is this going to change? How is it going to be better? How are we going to do things more efficiently, more accurately?
Yeah, I think my approach is a flavor of that was if I am first, I have a chance to shape it too. So I try to do a sober look, really amplify the good parts of it, and be the first to mitigate the negative impacts of that. And that is really fun because any tool could be used and misused, AI, internet, whatever, electricity, you name it. And so I find it exciting to be the first. Why do you find exciting to be the first?
I mean, I love your positive attitude and viewpoint because I share that sort of internal perspective of trying to look at things in the best light. But for me, this is a very exciting moment in the practice of law that has been, my whole career. So that law and technology space. And I just can't wait to see further adoption because it is going to lead to a change in the law and the way we practice. It's going to lead to the greater use of the power of the computer and not relying as much on the power of the eyeball. It's going to lead to changes in the way we bill, the way we practice law, the way we explain ourselves to courts and tribunals, the way we counsel our clients. Everything is going to evolve. And I think that's very exciting. There aren't any blacksmiths anymore in downtown villages, and there's a reason for that because we evolved, and I think we're at that same point in our society.
And I'll point to the fact that nobody complains.
Just people adapt. Human beings are very adaptable.
So let's talk about that. You change in law is happening. It is here to stay. The power of computers versus eyeball. We know where that is going. We have folks graduating from law school today or for years to come. We also have folks in the different stages of their career from beginning, middle to end. What is advice? We're all going to have to pivot one way or another at some point to some degree. What is advice you would give to any of those folks who will have to pivot to be part of this digital transformation in law? And I'm deliberately not focusing on young or recent grads because I believe this change will be transformative for all of us, at least to some extent. You tell me if you disagree.
No, I do agree. I mean, I've been in some of the law schools recently teaching a class or judging some law and technology competition. And I think that the lawyers coming up now are really prepared for this. They want to adopt it. They have incredibly creative ideas. And I think that they're excited about it. So they're not holding on to a notion of what the practice of law was like. They are ready. They are ready to incorporate this, and it excites them. Years ago, when e-discovery was just starting, I was speaking at a New York State Bar Association panel on this new concept of e-discovery, and an older gentleman stood up and started screaming at me with a piece of paper in his hand saying, "Are you telling me that there's a document that doesn't look like this?" And I'm like, yes. So I think that's where we are today, too. We have to let go of old notions, be open to the possible. What is possible using this new technology, because if you don't adapt, if you don't try to figure out how to incorporate it into your life, you're just going to be left behind, and you're just going to be, the person on Facebook looking at posts from the 80s.
Those were colorful.
Ads are coming back, though.
Yeah, that's right. And the answer to that, yes, sir, you got it right. What is the worst advice you received? I'm sure, from that room in the basement from which you were called to where you are today, you had a lot of stuff in the middle. What is the worst advice?
Well, the worst advice I ever received in my entire career was a supervisor of mine who said I would not be successful because my voice was too high and my desk was too neat. And so I interpret that today as a 60-year-old woman as I'm an organized woman. And so he did not like that. So that was kind of the worst advice I ever got. What was I supposed to do? Lower my voice and make a messier office. And then
Yeah, that's not very actionable.
no. And then in terms of the digital, I think people thought that you were degrading your career by investing yourself in the discovery phase or in using technology in the practice of law, that it was not something that would elevate your career, but you were degrading yourself. And so I had some naysayers who were discouraging to me, but luckily I didn't listen. And at the same time, I had amazing mentors and people who promoted me and encouraged me to continue. And so, I'm glad I listened to them.
Selective hearing. That's the key. Selective hearing. Ignore what doesn't serve you. Move forward and never look back. That is a really good mantra to live by. Maybe last question. Maybe it's two more questions. You splash pledge. What is it? Tell us about it. I know you've been talking a lot about it. What is it and why it's important?
Thanks for asking about that. So the Splash Pledge is service providers leading against sexual harassment. After some of the more recent conferences, women and men have been vocal about things that have happened to them at conferences and at surrounding events of conferences, sexual harassment, inappropriate behavior, touching. And I have heard some really disgusting and horrible stories. So when all this kind of came to a head a few months ago, I got very angry. And for those people who know me, when I get angry, I usually do something transformative. And sometimes not always to my personal benefit. But anyhow, with the support of our CEO at Simplify, Mark Zamsky, I was able to come out with this on LinkedIn, this splash pledge, asking other service providers to take the pledge to educate their employees, to remind employees about what professional behavior looks like, and to warn them that if they don't comply with the rules and conduct codes, that there will be consequences. And I was really gratified that in 2 weeks, we had over 35 service providers and 5 organizations sign the pledge. Since then, I have folded that movement into the work the women in e-discovery are doing in their Operation Safe Spaces, which will pick up the mantle. And I will be on the committee also to try to make some additional actionable change to support people and to create safer environments.
I love that you're doing it. That is a well-known problem. I know it's recently been going around because of recent conferences, but it does happen. If when you operate in tech or law or legal tech as a woman or sometimes as a man, you do have experience that should not be happening. I love that you're spearheading it and leading this change. Where can people learn more about it, and how can they help?
The Women in E-Discovery have a task force called Operation Safe Spaces. They're going to be coming out with some materials, but all of the Women in E-Discovery local chapters also have materials, seminars, and some future programming on this.
We covered a lot of ground. And I know you and I could be talking for a long time and we would have fun doing it, comparing notes. My notes not nearly as long as yours, but I think we would have had fun anyway. We are sadly coming to the end. I want to thank you for being here. This was very insightful and helpful to hear the story of how technology has transformed your career and impact you've had, both in your career and lives generally, and the law. What is the one thing you want people to take away from this conversation?
I would like people to always think about the next generation coming up. So a lot of us go through difficult points in our journeys. We pivot, we have difficult things happen to us at various junctures. We have to learn new things the hard way. And I would like for people to always try to remember, what can we do to make it easier for the next generation of people coming up in our space. I don't think it's true to say, I went through such a hard time and I learned this. I walked, to work in the snow without galoshes, and you have to do the same thing. I would really like to use our experiences to improve things for those of us who are able to help the next generation.
Marla, snow is usually what a girl named Olga who grew up in Siberia talks about. It does feel like Siberia. Massachusetts in the winter also feels like Siberia. That's what I told my husband, who made me go there in the winter once. But thank you so much, and thank you for this inspiring message of, hardships happen to all. They just don't have to repeat for generations to come. I think that's an important message and something to keep in mind. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They are an act of courage. Remember, the future of law is bright. Enjoy your in-house practice. It's an adventure of a lifetime. See you soon.